Hey there, my name is Vaughn, and this is the Vaughncast Show. This is a podcast that focuses on mental health, breaking societal stigmas, harm reduction, addiction, and recovery. If you like what you hear, subscribe and leave a review on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Also, follow the podcast Instagram at The Vaughncast Show, where I post video content from the show. All right, let's get into today's episode. All right, welcome to the Vaughncast Show. Happy Friday, everybody. Hope you all are doing well. Today I got North Carolina metalcore vocalist Megg Jacobs. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. It's a little bit rainy here in North Carolina. We got a thunderstorm going on, but that means I don't have to water my plants. So
yeah, awesome. Okay, so thunderstorms, do they happen a lot out in North Carolina?
Yeah, I always say it's kind of like, I don't know if you've ever been to Florida, but on the East Coast, like Florida is known for thunderstorms and they always happen at like 1 or 2 p.m. And I'm always like, Florida is like earlier North Carolina. So like we get thunderstorms like in the mid-afternoon to like early evening.
Okay.
A lot during the summer.
Right. And you said you have 2 dogs?
I do. Yeah, I have 2 dogs and 2 cats.
Oh, wow. Do they get along?
They do, yeah. So the cats were originally adopted like earlier before we got the dogs. So they kind of like had rule of the house before we brought the dogs in. And luckily our dogs are really not prey driven at all. And our cats are super chill. So they get along really well.
That is awesome. Mm-hmm. Cool. So you're a vocalist. Okay. I got to ask, like, were you a scene kid?
I really wanted to be. But I was kind of like, I was very shy when that was kind of happening. I grew up in Maine, just for like context.
Okay.
And my husband and I always joke, he's also from Maine, that it feels like the trends kind of hit that area of the country a little bit later than it does the rest of the country because we are so isolated. Like we're only connected to the US by one state, and that state is New Hampshire. So it's not like we're a bustling civilization up there. So when I was in high school, like 2010s ish, we got hit really hard with like Devil Wears Prada type scene stuff. And I like really wanted to emulate that, but I was a theater kid and my hair didn't do the thing, like it didn't do the swoopy thing, and I couldn't get it straight enough, and like I couldn't dye it because like it wouldn't happen. So like I did the skinny jeans and the Converse and some band tees, but I was always more of like a metalcore person. Like I have 2 very distinct loves. Like I love pop punk and like I love metalcore. So I feel like I hung out more with like the metal kids, and like my boyfriend at the time, my now husband, was very much like a metalhead. So that was kind of like our group.
Got it. Yeah. Okay. So I grew up like my high school years. I graduated in 2006, so that was definitely like a big thing. MySpace and like the emo scene thing was going on. I'm a fan of pop punk. I wore the girl jeans. I remember back then there were no skinny jeans for men, so we had to wear girl jeans and had a little swoosh, the little hair thing going. It was just super cool. Like I don't want to call it a phase, 'cause I still listen to that music to this day. Like sometimes I trip out. I go on Instagram and like the band's like, oh, like this album you listen to is like 20 years old. I'm like, oh my God, dude, I feel so old.
You're like, don't tell me that. I didn't need to.
Yeah. So when did you start getting into like emo or like metal music? What age?
I would probably say like 13 or so. I have always like been really, really drawn to music and like had a special connection with it. My mother played the piano, so did my grandmother, and so did my great grandmother. And my great grandmother, like when I was going to church and when I was involved in the church, she was the organist there. So it's always been very much a part of my life. And I didn't really know kind of what more music was out there until I kind of got into high school, because I was from such like a really, really tiny community. Like my town had less than 1,000 people in it and like one stop sign. Like we didn't even have a stoplight or anything. So we were all like pretty isolated, and most of the music we listened to was just on the radio. So if it wasn't on the radio, like I didn't know about it. But then going to high school and being in a school with like more kids that had like more exposure to that stuff, allowed me to kind of like branch out, much to my mother's dismay. She's like, "What the hell are you listening to?" And I was like, "This really cool band named Bullet for My Valentine, Mom." And yeah, luckily, like also I met my husband around the same time, when we were like 12 or 13. And like, he was very into like Disturbed and like all of those like hard rock bands. And I thought he was really cool. So I was like, oh, I also like that. And his family has always been into like the more metal side of rock as well. So I would say probably around like 12 to 13. That was also kind of like when I got my cell phone and could like listen to Pandora. And so I could like type in like Bullet for My Valentine radio and like listen to whatever popped up, like whatever the algorithm brought me. So that was huge, I think, at least for me, having more access to the internet. Again, I think growing up in Maine was kind of a weird time because we did get everything so much later. Like I had satellite internet, like I literally had like a dome on my house to get internet, and it was super duper slow because we didn't have anything. Like Spectrum wasn't there. Like you couldn't get cable or anything. So once that kind of technology kind of advanced far enough for me to be able to explore that new music, that's when I took the chance and did it.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I feel like the good thing about in a small town is a big community. It sounds pretty like chill. Yeah, so Pandora, I haven't heard that in a long time too. That was a thing. I remember I discovered a lot of bands and musicians through Pandora.
Yeah.
So,
do you remember like early iTunes when they had like free music Fridays where you could I don't know if anyone else knew about this, but iTunes would like collaborate with new up and coming artists, and the artist would like give away one of their songs for free. Like I think it was like every Friday or like once a month on a Friday. And like I discovered so many new bands from that. Like I think Devil Wears Prada was on there. And like some of those earlier like scene bands definitely like did that program a lot. So that was another thing. I'm like, technology, man. As soon as it hit, I was like, give me them screams.
yeah, I don't recall that. Devil Wears Prada though, that was a big band. I remember what my favorite song is their cover song, Still Fly by Big Timers.
Mm-hmm.
That's like my favorite song from them. So like how would you describe like metal music for those listening who don't? I mean, I kind of know, but like is there like a way you could describe that?
Yeah. So I think metal music, it kind of, if we want to get like real technical, it kind of all stems from like Black Sabbath, Dio kind of heavy music. So it's like very like distorted electric guitars, kind of like screamed aggressive lyrics. And I think like once you get to the metalcore side of things, which is kind of where more I live, it's like they're more like emo style music or emo style lyrics. But metal in general is just kind of like an explosion of energy, I think. And at least for me, it's a way to kind of get out a lot of feelings that I don't really necessarily have a way to get out otherwise. And I always really enjoy like pushing myself to extremes to like see what I can do. I'm a very competitive person, and coming from a vocal standpoint of, learning all I can as a traditional vocalist and doing like classical music and operatic music and jazz and show choir and like all of those things, I was like, I really want to like see how far I can push this vocal thing. And so that's kind of where metal comes into it. And, I think there's like a lot of metal elitists that will argue about like what genres or like what bands fit perfectly into one genre or not. But there's like so much overlap. So there's like death metal, which is really, really kind of aggressive, and the guitars are kind of down-tuned, and there's really like no melodic vocals in it. And there's like metalcore, which is what I do, which has like some melodic vocals and takes a lot of inspiration from like the hardcore punk movement. So pretty much the basic idea of it would be like think of like your 80s hair bands, but make it modern and take those like electric guitars and make them darker and kind of spookier. That is a lot of what the modern metal scene looks like, I guess. But yeah, and it's a lot of like yelling, like trying to think of how to describe it. But if you think of like that stereotypical, like, yeah, 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 like that kind of yelling in any song would be kind of classified as like a subgenre of metal. So yeah, aggressive guitars, fast drum beats most of the time, unless you're doing some like, I don't know, like black death metal. Some metal elitist is going to come at me in the comments because I don't know all my genres. But yeah, just like really kind of aggressive, if guitars, electric guitars most of the time, aggressive vocals. Yeah, at least for me, like I love it. I think it was kind of a natural progression from going from like those early emo like metalcore bands or like melodic hardcore bands to more of like the modern metalcore scene that we're seeing today.
Got it. Yeah, that was a very detailed, thorough explanation. Thank you for that. Yeah, no, that was really good. For me, like, I like some metal music. I don't know too much. I mean, this is kind of sound kind of off, but I like back then, like Bring Me the Horizon was like the most heavy thing I heard, like the early stuff.
Oh yeah, people
like
love them still.
Plagues. Yeah, I really commend them for being able to change their sound and just grow over time.
Definitely.
So you said you were like doing different types of vocal stuff growing up. When did you start singing?
So I've been singing like as early as I could talk. Like I said, I'm not involved with the church now, but when I was younger, like we went pretty routinely, and my that's kind of how I learned how to read music, because you'd have the hymnal and they have the, you know, the music notes there that you could follow along, and just being exposed to that and, you know, having exposure through my mom and my grandmother and my great grandmother kind of allowed me to pick up some of that musical education. And then the school I attended had like a pretty good music program where we were like having music at least once a week from kindergarten through 8th grade. So we did a lot of singing through that. And the teacher that taught it like took it very seriously, even if you were young. He was, you know, when you're performing, you're in black and white and you're going to do it correctly. And I think I learned a lot from there. And I've always been kind of like shy and awkward, especially like in person. And I have a lot of anxiety too when meeting new people. So in school, it was like a nightmare for me. Like I didn't really fit in. So being able to sing and learn, and like that was my spot. Like that's what I love to do. So I think like my first musical I was in was around when I was 8. That's when I like started doing musicals, and I would do it every year from that on. And yeah, I started doing like classical and more serious like competitive stuff around high school age. And then in college it kind of dropped off because college and the college I had didn't have any like music program. But then I picked it up back once I moved down to North Carolina.
Awesome. Okay, so you're exposed to this all your life, and you had no formal training. You just kind of, well, aside from school, you never had like a vocal tutor. You just had like you just went to school and they taught you how to sing.
Yeah, so I did like the school I went to in Maine, like when I was in high school, took show choir and like performing in theater very, very seriously, like more seriously than any of the other schools in our area. Like we went down to Disney and performed kind of thing. And the people that were in that program were very strict and very good at their job and like taught me very, very well. And the accompanist that I worked with like through that program, when I transferred high schools, I moved closer to where he lived. So I was like, hey, can you like take me on as a student and like help me learn some more of this, you know, training and sight reading and all that sort of stuff. So I did work with him doing like classical music things. And then once I moved to North Carolina, I had a few lessons with a local vocal coach and kind of fell off because pandemic stuff happened. And then when I was like, I really want to learn how to scream. Like I want to learn how to do this thing and I want to learn how to do it safely. I connected with my vocal coach and kind of mentor. Her name is Janelle and she's great. And she's, you know, been in a couple well-known bands. And I was like, I want you to tell me how to do the thing. And that I've just been doing it for about a little over 2 years now, I think.
Right. Yeah, I was gonna get into this. My next question. I love like the screams in bands when they scream. That's so cool, And I tried just doing it. I think I just like it hurt my throat a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I try to stream like all these psychs and all this stuff, and listen to some metal bands. I'm like, dude, how do they do that stuff? So, like you said, there's a safe way and a not safe way to scream. Can you talk about the differences and how to go about that?
Yeah, definitely. So I think there's been a lot more education and knowledge seeking that's gone on in the metal movement as of late. I don't know if you're familiar with the band Lorna Shore, but there's a vocalist within that band who is kind of like renowned now in the metalcore scene. He's very, very talented, can do like crazy things with his voice, like sound like a demon kind of stuff. And he's done a lot of videos where he kind of will like go in an MRI machine and perform some of those vocals so you can see like what the vocal structure and all the musculature in the throat is doing. And I think that's been like, at least for me, super duper helpful, like learning where to put certain, like where to put my tongue or like where to move my jaw. So I think one of the main things is, at least as far as I'm aware, and as far as like the general consensus seems to be, there's two main buckets of screaming. You have your fry scream, which is kind of like, I think of it, how the Kardashians kind of speak with like a vocal fry. They speak like this. It's kind of like projecting over that, where you're kind of using that grovelly tone. And at least in my case, it's very, very, it's pretty quiet. That's what a lot of vocalists do. Like, I don't know if you're familiar with the band Gore. They're kind of popping off right now, but Haley from Gore uses a lot of fry screams. Garrett from Silent Planet uses a lot of fry screams. And then you have the other bucket, which I fall into. Is called false chord screaming. So the way that the throat is structured, there's you have your vocal cords, which are kind of two structures that vibrate together like this to produce pitch. And I apologize for people who are listening to this audio, but just kind of they rub together in a vibrational way to create the sound that you're producing. And with false chord, what happens is there's an additional muscle structure that kind of goes over those vocal cord folds, and you breathe through those folds. And it's it's a deeper sound. It requires more breath control. And it requires more like power behind it because you're producing a louder sound. And with that, I don't know if you've ever like been really frustrated with your parents and been like, oh my God. It's that sound that you're producing and then holding it out and learning to control pitch around that. At least for me, it took me a good long time to like understand how to control those muscles, because it's not something that we do super naturally. But it's completely safe. I actually was tracking vocals earlier today for my next release. And you couldn't tell because my voice, it sounds fine. Like I don't sound like I'm in any pain, because I'm not. And I think there are a lot of ways that you can injure yourself. And I think once you get more into the screaming, like science, when you do hear that unhealthy scream, you'll know. But it's kind of like people haven't really caught up to the new wave of education that comes along with like learning how to scream, unfortunately. And there's a lot of like bad information on the internet, and I'm sure people will argue about my technique in the comments, but there's ways to do it to like hurt yourself, and there's ways not to. And my recommendation has always been like, be very, very humble when you're introducing yourself into this space and talking to people who have been doing this for a really long time, and come from it from a place of like, that you're going to sound really weird. And that you're going to be making like really grotesque, ugly noises for a really long time until you get good. And even like when you do get good, a lot of the noises that you make as a screamer sound really weird, like out of context. Like if you're just singing or, hanging out and tracking vocals without music behind it, it sounds really, really weird. But in the context of a song, it makes sense. But fun fact, You know how dogs like bark and like they can growl and stuff? It's because they have false cords and they're using those false cords to like make that sound. Which I'm like, that's the coolest thing ever. I'm making dog bark noises.
Yeah. No, thank you for that detailed explanation. It makes sense. There's two types, and yeah, I didn't realize how much like control, like controlled breathing and just all the muscles working. That's pretty interesting. Because I remember like when I kept trying to do it, it hurt my throat, and I know some vocalists had to change the way of screaming, or they would or just stop, or they would destroy their vocal cords too.
Yeah. There's this kind of really well-known vocal coach who works with a lot of those larger artists. Her name is Melissa Cross, and she's kind of like the mother of the fry technique. And she's the one who has been kind of like preaching the fry techniques, praises for a very, very long time. I know recently, like I said, she worked with Garrett from Silent Planet. As far as I understand, like he used to do a false chord, or he used to do an unhealthy technique. Not saying false chord is unhealthy. I'm just saying he used to do an unhealthy technique and wasn't able to keep up on tour. And now he's kind of transitioned into a fry style, and he's able to, you know, hold those notes for longer and able to control his breath. It is a very like, when I was in vocal therapy and kind of going through the whole process to repair a strain that I had, my vocal therapist was like, no, you're a vocal athlete. Like that's warranted because you're using all of these muscles in a very extreme way that not a lot of people are using them for. And I like that term. I think it's apt. And I don't know. I think you should always approach any new practice from a place of humility, and especially something that could be, you know, detrimental to yourself. I know like Burt McCracken from The Used, he can't scream anymore. At least live, like I don't see Vic Fuentes doing a whole lot of screams from Pierce the Veil. And I think it is a lot because like there wasn't that education way back when they were starting and, you know, kind of creating the genre in a way. And they just can't do it anymore because they hurt themselves.
Yeah. Okay. Vic Fuentes. I like Pierce the Veil.
Mm-hmm.
Well, which category would he fall in with the screaming? Because I can hear that scream in my head.
Oh, he's a fry screamer, 100%.
Fry screamer. Okay.
Yeah.
And then Ollie Sykes from back then, that was a fry screamer too?
I think so. I mean, it's kind of hard to tell because he doesn't use the best technique, especially back then. Like he blew out his voice and like I think he had to have surgery or something. And he does a lot of like really cool stuff post-production too. I think he does mostly fries. It's really hard to tell live because with fries, you can generally hold your note out longer because you're using less air to push the sound out. Think of like, you know, when you have a balloon and you're like putting the end of the balloon and pulling it really tight and it kind of makes that sound. That's what's happening with your vocal cords when you're doing fries. Like you're stretching the vocal cords like really thin and only letting a tiny bit of air out. So obviously like you can hold notes longer because you don't need as much air. And with false chord, it takes a lot more air because you're, you know, pushing on those false chords. But I would guess he probably is doing fry at this point because he's holding those notes so long. But I'm not entirely sure because a lot of his like in recordings, he does a lot of different styles too.
Mm. Right. Yeah. Because I remember a lot of times I hear about artists like vocalists, like they couldn't scream anymore. I didn't realize that the guy from Used can't do it. I know the guy from Dance Gavin Dance, he couldn't scream anymore because of that. He was doing it wrong, and I'm glad that there's more education about it now. Because that is kind of tragic. Like if you built your whole like career on your voice and you can't do a certain thing or you can't sing anymore, that's pretty tragic. But
yeah,
I'm really glad that there's more information now that can help mitigate that damage.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you're at all interested in like the topic of screaming or like I think it's called pedagogy, that's like the scientific study of vocals and like producing sound, I would definitely recommend those Will Ramos YouTube videos because they're super duper interesting. And at least for me, I'm a very visual person. So being able to see like, oh, like when he's doing this, like his tongue is in this position. And when he's making this sound, this is what his throat looks like. And that's how he's using his muscles was super duper helpful. But again, like don't hurt yourself. Don't. That's what everyone says, but like don't do it because you'll regret it later.
Yeah. So you sang competitively, grew up, doing vocals. What made you decide to become a recording artist? Like, hey, I can actually do this. When did you start recording and doing that kind of stuff?
So I formed a band, I think like early 2020. Like my father passed away in early 2020, like not related to COVID. But it was like he passed away at the end of January, and then March happened and COVID happened, and then like my best friend also passed away in 2020, like in the end of 2020. So I kind of, once I moved down to North Carolina and kind of got back into music and was like, oh, like I'm settled, I can do this thing. Like there's a larger population of people that are interested in the same type of music I'm into. Like I could actually do this. That's kind of when I was like, oh wait, like I can do a thing. And so after my dad died, I kind of reevaluated a lot of how I was living my life and how I was spending my time and what I wanted to focus on. And within that, I kind of came to the consensus of like, I really want to do things that make me happy. And music makes me really happy. Even just like singing in my car makes me really, really happy. So I want to try and do it. And so I got a band together like over that year, and we started recording around that time frame as well. And then we started gigging like sometime last year. And I did end up leaving the band in 2023, like at the later half, just to like personal conflicts and work issues. But I knew that I like still wanted to do music. I just needed to like, again, refocus and say, what about music makes me happy? And what am I going to like, how am I going to make this happen for myself by any means possible? So at the time I was working super duper far away from where I live, like an hour commute there and an hour commute back 5 days a week was really, really difficult with the band. So I was like, okay, like, I don't think I can do this anymore. Like it's just taking up way too much of my time. Like I'm not able to do other things that bring me joy in my life outside of music. And so I took a step back. They regrouped and are doing their own thing now. And I contacted a producer that I, was pretty familiar with their work, and we had worked together before. And I was like, hey, I'm kind of interested in doing a solo project. Would you be interested in helping me out with that? Because I am not a guitarist. I am not a bassist. Like I'm not a drummer. I don't have those skills, but I really still want to continue making music and writing, and seeing how far I can push this thing. And they luckily took the project on and were like, hell yeah, let's do it. And it has been incredibly fulfilling for me because it takes up less of my time, and I can still do other things that bring me a lot of joy and like that keep me sane. Like going to the gym. I wasn't able to go to the gym because of my schedule with my old band, unfortunately. And it really took a toll on my mental health. And that's something that I need to do on a routine basis in order to stay sane. And I wasn't able to do that. And because I also work a full-time job, if I hadn't made that clear. But being able to do it by myself and kind of build my brand by myself has been incredibly fulfilling and has allowed me to kind of explore doing whatever the hell I want to do, which has been really cool. Because again, it means that I can push myself further and further into these more extreme techniques. And, if I'm feeling like I'm really into this kind of sound one day, I can go and learn how to do it and kind of create a song out of it. And if I'm into another sound the next day, like there's no one telling me that I can't do it. I think working by yourself, the only person that's putting a limit on what you can succeed is yourself. And that's been very, very freeing. And something that I really enjoy. So I've kind of I have 3 solo songs out right now, and I have a collaboration that's out. That's more of like pop punky. And then I also have a few more collaborations that are like actively coming out. And I just finished tracking for my next single today. So lots of things in the works. I'm really excited, going forward, what the solo project's going to look like.
That's awesome. My condolences to your best friend and your dad. It must be really difficult to get through.
Yeah, 2020 was a hellscape.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely was, just in so many ways.
Mm-hmm.
I make music as well. I make hip hop music. I'm a rapper, and yeah, I like being by myself so I can kind of do my own thing. Mm-hmm. What's interesting you pointed out is you also have a full-time job, and I think I don't know. I feel like sometimes social media has gives us this perception that like, oh, all you do is music, but musicians have like other things to do and you got to pay the bills and everything.
Yeah.
How is it like balancing, the music and work and other stuff you want to do? How do you go about balancing that? Because I'm sure it could be tough.
Yeah, like I said, it's become a lot easier since I gone solo and kind of had more control over my schedule. I recently switched my job like about 2 weeks ago. And with my new schedule, I work 4/10s Monday through Thursday, which means I have every single Friday off. So every weekend is a 3-day weekend. And I'm very lucky and like privileged to be able to have that as my schedule. Because that means like every Friday now I'm planning on creating content and making music and having that be like my music business day. Whereas in the past, it became really overwhelming trying to, work 8 hours a day. And then I had a 2-hour commute because I had to drive an hour there and an hour back. So I didn't get home until pretty late, cook dinner, do all of the things, prep for the next day, go to the gym. It just became like really overwhelming and impossible to balance. So I'm really excited about this new schedule that I've taken on because it is going to allow me to do more music things. And it has already allowed me to, like the past 2 weeks I've been tracking in the studio and, writing. And it's been really, really helpful for me. Because I think, especially when you're, working a 9 to 5, 2 weeks or 2 days in the weekend is not enough. And especially people that like work more than one job, I can't imagine. Like I need one day to like just mentally not be present for a little bit. And then one day to like run errands and like be a homeowner and clean my house and do my lawn and, do all that stuff. So I'm like really privileged, like I said, to be able to have that extra time once a week now and have a little bit more time. But in the past, it didn't work out. And that's why I had to leave my band. But now I think focusing on my mental health and focusing on my physical health as well has been, it like allows me to be more motivated and allows me to do more with my time.
Right. And I totally agree with the 2 days for days off. It's difficult. I have 2 days off in a week and it's good, but yeah, I need like one day to just chill. And sometimes I feel guilty because I got music, podcast and everything. So I just have to like, be mindful that, we're only human, because there's another time where I got to run errands and clean and all that stuff. So I totally can relate to that part where it's like, yeah, I got to do like work, but then on my days off, sometimes I just want to chill and I just got to like be mindful and just tell myself it's okay to just relax and maybe not do anything for most of the day because I really need it. It's just so difficult. Sometimes I'm so burnt out from work.
Exactly. And like I said, I'm so excited to kind of have this new schedule where I am able to just have one dedicated day a week to do like my hobby / other job that I, have to do because I feel like it does take a lot of time. It does take a lot of time to like build a brand and make music and film content, do all that stuff. And I didn't have that time before, and now I do. And I'm just, so thankful and so excited that I stumbled into this opportunity with my new position. And I'm really looking forward to it, to continuing this schedule. Even if it means I work 2 extra hours a day, like I don't care. Give me that extra day off.
Yeah, I'm happy for you. You get this new schedule. It seems like it's working out. So writing music, what's your creative process in writing lyrics? Because I quoted one I thought was pretty cool. It's from Closing Your Coffin. Comfort is no use for the wealth when you suck others dry before closing your coffin. I thought that was a pretty cool line. Is that like a vampire line?
Yeah. So I kind of, when I was writing that song, I went into the idea of like, I had a specific person in mind and I won't name them here, but I was like, this person is just a vampire, like sucking everything from everyone. And it was really, really bothering me. So I wanted to kind of take that imagery and apply it to the situation that I was in at the time. And for me, writing screams is much easier than writing melodies. And the song that you're referencing has a very strong like backing beat to it. So typically what I'll do first off is I will listen to the track or listen to the beat that I'm given by my producer or that we've talked about. and kind of go over it and like map it out in my brain. And I typically use like a general like consonant or just vowel sound like da to like map everything out. So I'll be like da 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 da, like wherever I want specific notes to hit. And then what I'll do is I'll put on some additional music that I kind of want to emulate, or sounds or vibes that I want to bring to my song. And I have a notebook where I'll set a timer for 10 minutes and I will just write whatever comes to mind. It doesn't have to be related to anything. It can be nonsense. And I will just write for 10 minutes consecutively, and take a look at those lyrics, or take a look at those words after the timer is done and I've done listening to my music, and just look for things that might be interesting or might be related to the topic that I wanted to write about. And it kind of, it takes you to really cool places. And that's been really successful for me lately, because it's kind of, I think, allowed me to tap into some of those things that I might not talk about or might not sing about otherwise, because they're kind of abstract thoughts. They're kind of abstract concepts. And that was a problem like with my earlier songwriting, is I got very personal, and I got very like in my head, and everything had to be like very direct. And it kind of like, at least to me, I was like, oh, this is a lot. It's kind of like sounds too much. Like I want to like dial it back a little bit. So I think too, with my newer songs that I'm going to be releasing like within the next few months here, you'll hear there's a more evolved style. It's definitely more abstract, but I think in a way that I really resonate with, and something that I really enjoy writing.
Right. Yeah. Very cool lyrics. I always wondered I'm always interested how other artists get into writing lyrics. So earlier you mentioned about anxiety, and I saw a post on your Instagram about your anxiety. Can you talk to us more about that? Because I thought that was a pretty different type of anxiety, where you feel the anxiety response, but it doesn't come from your head. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah. So I have been suffering from anxiety since I was like 6, like 5 or 6 was when I was officially diagnosed. I have like distinct memories of having anxiety and panic attacks when I was a kid, and my parents just being like, what the hell? Like, what do we do with this? Like, why is she freaking out about this thing and not understanding? And I've been medicated on and off throughout that time period. And I think at this point, like through medication and therapy and meditation and a lot of those other techniques that I've used, like exercise, for example, I'm able to pretty well handle a lot of the anxious thoughts that come into my head. And I understand that this is anxiety talking. Like, I don't need to be scared or anxious about this thing in this moment. But my body doesn't understand that. So I'll be able to push those anxious thoughts away, or get off the hamster wheel of obsessive like anxiety, but my body isn't able to do that. So I'll have moved on, not have thought about that anxious thought in, hours or days even. And suddenly my body will just respond as if it's in a panic. And it's been really, really frustrating, because this is something that's happened only, I think, more recently within the past couple years. And I've been working with my doctor on it like pretty closely, because we were like, is this a vocal thing? Is this a, other illness thing? Like, is it a acid reflux thing? Because the main symptom that I have, which again is really irritating as a vocalist, is that I get globus sensation, which is when it feels like you have like a big ball in your throat. I describe it like, when you're about to cry and you like are trying really hard not to cry and your throat gets all tight. It feels like that. And I've kind of been dealing with it for a couple years now, where it'll happen and I'm like, oh my God, like I'm not even anxious, bro. Like I have nothing to be anxious about right now. And I'm mentally not anxious. I don't know what's going on, but my body just won't respond to that. And I think the more I think about it and the more I'm irritated by the fact that the globus sensation is happening, the more my body is going to like kick it into overdrive. So the only way I can really get relief from that is by like actively distracting myself, or like doing work or sleeping. But of course, whenever I stop and I notice it again, I'm like, oh my God, this is the worst. And it's just, I think, something that's obviously really irritating as a vocalist, because I want to be able to use my voice and use it effectively at all times and perform and be able to record. But sometimes I can't. And so that's been something I've been working with my therapist on. And I think we found a medication combo that works really well, that is specifically designed for people who have, anxious bodies that just like can't settle down, but don't necessarily have the anxious thoughts. And it's been really interesting to, have this medication and be able to kind of shut that response down, because it does feel like, I was able to shut the mind thing off, but I wasn't able to shut the body thing off without a little extra help. So it's like one thing I can do, I know that will always kind of fix the global sensation is, go do a cycle class. But I can't really do that like all the time. Like I can't be cycling all day, every day. So, having things like medication have been really, really helpful. And I think more people probably suffer with it than people realize. And I hope that there's less of a stigma about it. The first song that I ever wrote for my solo project is called Without You. And that song is very much about like, who would I be if I didn't have this anxiety kind of like backpack on at all times, right? Like, I don't know the person. I don't know that person. I've never been without anxiety as a diagnosis, and, always having that in the back of my brain. And I kind of like mourn the person that I could have been if I didn't have it. But I also am very aware of like how privileged I am to get the treatment that I need and be able to manage it so effectively, because I know people that aren't privileged and haven't had that time to, work through it with a therapist or be able to manage it effectively with medication, because it can be really debilitating.
Yeah, I've never heard about it until I saw your post on Instagram. And that must be difficult, especially because you got over it in your head, but your body's sensation is still there in your body.
Yeah.
It's just tough. For me, like a lot of other people, it starts in my head and I just spiral, man. I just think of like sometimes the worst case scenario of things. And I'm learning now through therapy as well, just be more mindful. Like you said, this is the anxiety talking.
Yeah.
And I'm able to back off sometimes, but some days are easier than others. Like I can just be caught up in this cycle of just like negative thinking and all the worst case scenarios. That's like a lot of this stuff will never even happen. But what's trippy is your body doesn't know that. So it's acting like it's actually happening.
Yeah. It's just like being in a constant fight, flight, or freeze response. And at least for me, like my global sensation will last weeks without going away. So it does get extremely painful. And it can be difficult sometimes. Like I do develop a vocal fry when my global sensation is really, really bad, because it puts so much pressure, I think, on my throat that it is kind of like pushing those vocal cords together. And I had to work through a lot of that stuff in vocal therapy when we were kind of like going through the process of like, what is this? Why is she in pain? Like, why is she having these issues? And, I don't, it's like like I said, I mourn the person that I could have been. But I am grateful to have the resources that I do now, because I think back then I'm like, if I still had the level of anxiety I did when I was a kid, like it would be very, very difficult. And it makes me laugh too, because I think I know the term masking is used a lot in the ADHD and autism and neurodivergent community. But I do think like with anxiety and depression too, there is a certain element of kind of masking what your true feelings are. And it made me laugh a lot the other day, because when I was leaving my old job, we have this weekly meeting where we'll go over and do like an icebreaker question. And my favorite thing ever is just to ask like unhinged icebreaker questions. So the last one we did for my last day there was, we wanted to make a tier list of the team, like who would survive longest in the Hunger Games. And I came in second place, and I was like really, really proud of that. And I was talking to my coworker. I'm like, yeah, I think I did pretty good. And they're like, yeah, you just have no fear. I think you could do it. And I was like, bitch, I have all the fear. Like I am always terrified all the time. And that just kind of struck me of like, oh, I am just 100% quote unquote masking around all these people, because I don't want to give off the perception of like, I'm scared all the time, when I am truly scared all the time.
Yeah, I can relate with the masking thing. I don't know if it's just because how I am or work. Every time someone always asks, "How are you doing?" right away I say fine, even though I'm not
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
It's just, oh, I'm fine, doing good, chill.
It's like, I'm not dead inside. It's fine.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely masking. I have ADHD, and when I found out, I was so relieved because I realized, oh, I'm I'm not like tripping out. This is an actual thing, and it
Mm-hmm.
explains a lot of my behavior.
Yeah,
So yeah.
definitely.
So also, what do you? I saw something really cool on your Instagrams. Like when you're not doing like music, you like to go to the Renaissance Fair. I've never been to one. What's that like? It sounds really cool.
Oh my God, it was so fun. Like the first time I went, it kind of was a happenstance. I really needed like a high quality witch's hat for a photo shoot that I was doing. And I couldn't order one online fast enough. And the Renaissance Festival like happened to be in my state that weekend. And my husband is kind of like into D&D and into all that stuff. And I was like, Matthew, I think we need to go to the Renaissance Fair. I need to buy a high quality witch's hat. And I know that they're like going to be hat sellers at this place. And he was like, yeah, hell yeah, we'll go to the Renaissance Fair. So we just happened to go one day and I had so much fun. Oh my God, it was a blast. I was like not dressed up at all. I had like oh, sorry, my cat's here too, by the way. Everyone say hi to Moxie.
Hi, Moxley.
He's a good boy. And I just had a blast. I got to hold a goose. I forged my own knife, like, out of a railroad spike. That was really cool. Everyone was just like super friendly. I also really like birds. Like I think wild birds are really cool. And there was a guy there that was like doing displays with wild birds. So it was just like the best day ever. And the next year I was like, oh my God, guys, we got to get a big group to go because this is the best. And so we had a big bunch of like our friends go the next year. And I think it's going to be like a tradition where, you know, we just get a huge group together and all go to the Renaissance Fair. And it's a blast. Like if you have one that you can go to, I would highly recommend it. Like everyone there is super nice. And one of my favorite things about people is I really like it when other people are like really into things and like want to tell me about the thing and like kind of buy into whatever they're selling. Like that is really appealing to me. So with the Renaissance Festival, especially like the jousting, like as long as you buy into the jousting and like you understand like I am at a Renaissance Festival and I am pretending that this joust isn't like predetermined and that, you know, everything's going to be fine, then you're going to have a blast. Like if you just pretend that you're in this world and you buy in, it is amazing. It is so much fun. And I brought my friend last year who had never been to one either. And I was like, just you wait. Just you wait. Like you are going to love the Renaissance Festival and you are going to like want to come back multiple times this year. And the entire time she's like, this is great. This is amazing. I would have never come to the Renaissance Festival because people don't like know. They're like, oh, it's super nerdy, or like, oh, I don't have a costume. Like I can't come to the Renaissance Festival. And then they go to it once and they're like, oh my God, this is the best thing I've ever done. I mean, there's turkey legs, there's beer, there's cider, there's like ducks. There's lots of birds. There's like a surprising amount of birds at our local Renaissance Festival. There are mermaids. Like it's just a blast. I highly, highly recommend. It's so fun.
All right. I will definitely check it out. It sounds really cool with your description. I've seen depictions of it and media, like movies and shows. It sounds cool. I guess my last question is, what's your relationship with social media as an artist? Because I know, like, I don't know, when you put yourself out there, sometimes you may not get good supporters or good comments, but sometimes you get like really negative people talking shit. How do you manage? How do you deal with that?
It's difficult. And I think there's the weird, like, contradiction in my brain going on at all times where I really, really don't want to be perceived. Like, I don't want other people to know I exist, right? Like, I don't want to exist in other people's brains because that's really uncomfortable for me. But as an artist who is in 2024 and producing music and putting it out, I understand that I do have to have people perceive me and understand who I am and, you know, see me as a human being, because that's what really people want at this point. in this, day and age is to know the artist very, very closely and be able to follow them on Instagram and follow them on TikTok. And, know their opinions about everything. Like they want to be your best friend. And for me, it's been pretty difficult because I still do live this life where I go to my 9 to 5 every day, or I'm 7 to 5, and do my STEM job and think very logically and have a house and a husband and 2 dogs and 2 cats and, do all those normal things. But I'm also, a metalcore singer and this badass lady who has to be on the internet. And, there is kind of that contradiction. And it's been pretty difficult. I was posting a lot of covers earlier this year and I kind of got burnt out. And I was like, I just need to take a break from doing the covers and focus on my own thing and focus on doing things that make me happy again on social media. And where I found a lot of success is just kind of by being myself. I post a lot of things that aren't necessarily related to my music, but by being myself, I'm kind of creating a community of people that I really truly enjoy talking to and hanging out with online. And they seem to do the same for me. So they want to support what I'm putting out. And that's been incredibly lucky. And I think by, building a community that way, it feels less weird. It feels less like everyone's looking at me and judging me and everything I'm saying. And instead it feels like I'm just talking to like Fred down the street who, just wants to support his friend who's putting out music. So that's been interesting. And I commend all those people who like do social media as a living, because I was really, really tired of like looking at my own face after a while. Because I'm sure, like when you edit videos, like you stare at yourself a lot and you end up like, at least I did. I was like judging every eyebrow movement I was making. I was like, oh, I need to do another take because like my hair doesn't look good. And I'm like, oh, I need to do another thing because the lighting isn't great. Or like my mouth looks weird. And I'm like, no one cares, but I care. And I was just so tired of like looking at myself all the time, trying to edit and make the video polished and look good. And I think that just became too much. And I was like, I just need to like a little bit of a break. And in creating that break and kind of refocusing how I'm presenting myself as social media and more of like being myself and being a real goofy, like I'm a silly goose on social media. And just doing that has been, I think, a little bit more of a relief than anything. And I think it's just, I don't know. I commend anyone who does social media for a living because that's just rough. I think you become very judgmental of yourself more than any one person ever should be, because it's like, no one's looking at you that hard except you.
Yeah, I totally agree. I also too have like a 9 to 5 job, my own personal life, and it's just tough to balance sometimes. And I don't know, social media, like it's just like you said, it's pretty difficult, posting stuff constantly, and I edit my own stuff too. And sometimes I feel like a narcissist, like I'm just like looking at myself, editing this of myself. I'm like, this feels kind of weird.
Exactly.
Kind of thing. But yeah, it's difficult. Like I feel like I have to be on social media. Like if I could, I would just create music and just do podcasts and not have to promote. Like for me, that's just difficult to kind of promote. I don't know how it is for you, but just promoting stuff. It's like, yeah, it's just difficult, but it is what it is.
It is. And I feel like sometimes people get real weird, especially like I'm a woman on the internet and I'm a woman in a very kind of like niche community on the internet, like in the metal community. And people get really weird about it. Like I've had, especially on YouTube, because I feel like YouTube is very anonymous. I've had comments of people like just being incredibly sexist and, questioning if I'm a cis woman or not because I'm screaming on the internet. And then I've also had people like say that they're going to treat me like a goddess and call me mommy, like on the same video. And it's like the dichotomy of man, right? Everything I put on the internet is free and open for people to comment on. And that means that there are going to be some weird people who comment weird things, because I feel like the more niche that your content is, or the more niche that you go with whatever you're putting out there, like the more very specific people are going to see it. And I love metalheads. But some people that comment on those videos that are anonymous, it gets pretty intense. Luckily, like, most people are pretty supportive. But I've definitely had some people that are really intense. Especially like not even my music content. Like sometimes they'll comment on my Instagram stuff. Being a woman on the internet, especially, it's definitely an interesting experience. And again, doesn't make me want to be perceived. Like if this is what you're saying in public, what are you saying about me? Like in your head, what are you thinking? I don't like that.
Yeah, and I can imagine it's difficult. Like a lot of genres or a lot of like occupations or whatever, it's like mainly male dominated. So when they see a woman in there, oh, like, double standards. Oh, like, are you really male? Like, can you name like your top favorite bands? Like,
Oh my God,
who do you
yeah.
like, kind of thing. Yeah, that kind of stuff. I can imagine that being difficult, but it's awesome you still keep doing it anyways. Yeah, for me too, it's like I don't want to live in people's heads like that.
Yeah.
I kind of want to do my own thing, post and just go. But yeah, being creative, sometimes you have to just be accepting of it.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of like my anxiety. A lot of it is I have issues with feeling out of control. Like I don't like feeling like my fate is up to other people's determination. Like especially like if I'm on a plane, for example, I don't like it because I can't see forward and like I can't save myself if we're going to like hit anything, right? I think it's kind of similar where I don't like living in other people's heads because I can't control what they're thinking about me and I don't know what they're thinking about me, and that makes me really uncomfortable. And it's definitely something I'm working on, and I think I've gotten better at it, but I'm still like, that entire concept is bonkers. I don't like it. I don't like living in other people's heads.
Yeah, it's difficult, but feel like sometimes like, people are going to say or do what they're going to do. And sometimes you just have to like mute, block, or just put your phone down. Because I noticed that with myself. Sometimes I get so wrapped up, especially with like online arguments. In the past, I would get so wrapped up into it.
Yeah.
And then, maybe like a few replies gone by, maybe like an hour or so gone by. End of the day, I'm like, dude, why am I arguing with a random stranger I'll probably never meet ever? But this took a lot of my time and effort, and it probably affected my performance at work or school or how I interacted with other people.
Yeah.
And I just have to just like, I don't know, I'm being more mindful of it. I don't really argue as much on the internet anymore, but yeah, it's just something, I don't know. It's just something I'm mindful of. It's difficult.
I feel like that's what those people want though. Like once they're commenting like rude shit, they're just like, I really want a response out of them. Like I had someone comment at one point because I made like a blooper reel about me trying to do a cover, and like I was with my cat because my cat came and wanted to like hang out. And it was just like a cute little video of me dancing with my cat to a song. And they're like, see, this is what the left wants, childless cat ladies, blah, 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 blah. And like, my content is not political at all. I was like, what the hell are you talking about? And I'm like, literally, I'm down, like my husband is downstairs. I am married. Like I am living my life. I am very happy. But like, I would never comment anything like that. And I don't understand why other people comment things like that. So my favorite way to respond to that at this point is just being like, okay, like I'll just respond, okay. And they'll be like, I think that makes them angrier because they want to get that response. But just kind of shutting it down and being like, sounds good. Thumbs up emoji. Okay.
Yeah, I'm learning now there's this thing I've noticed, internet, like you're baiting people or people are baiting other people.
Yeah.
Like I'm noticing it now, be more mindful. Like they purposely say things that are really, it's a hot take or something controversial on purpose to get a rile out of people. And now it's like, before I respond, I'm like, wait, is that what they're trying to do?
Yeah.
I'm not even going to respond. Because like you said, this is what they want to do. Some people like get off on like trolling, and I get it. Like, maybe I did too when I was like a lot younger, or like, like when you're early 20s, but dude, I'm 36, man. I don't know. It's just a lot of time and effort, and I just try to stay away from it.
Definitely. And it's like, I would like to take a nap. I don't want to fight with you on the internet. Like, I don't have that time or energy. And again, this is just me being a little gremlin, but I'm like, I enjoy knowing that they didn't get any satisfaction from getting my response. So I'm like, sounds good. You didn't get a response out of me. I know you tried real hard, but too bad. So sad. Like, it's not going to happen.
Yeah. And also too, I feel like these are things they would never say in person. Because my
Oh,
thing is
never.
like, they hide behind like fake instant Instagram accounts or fake
Mhm.
YouTube accounts. It's kind of like, would you actually say this to a person if you see them face to face in the same room? I highly doubt it. So I just try to be mindful of that. I try to say, like, before I say something, I'm like, would I actually say this? I mean, I can just disagree without being really like vile or just not
Yeah.
respond at all.
Yeah, definitely. Um, and I think because I'm in kind of like a more extreme niche genre, like there's already a bunch of people that like really don't like metal and like think it's horrible. So I get a lot of those comments too, where they're like, this is disgusting. This is horrible. And I always think I'm like, I'm not making my content for you. Like you clearly are not my intended audience. Like you don't have to leave hateful comments down below. And get all aggressive about it just because you don't like the genre of music that I'm playing. Because the people who do like my genre of music like what I'm putting out, and that's what I'm making content for. So it's like, I know I'm doing a good job. I know that what I'm producing is quality. Just because you don't like it and you don't particularly resonate with it doesn't mean that you have to be super rude and comment mean things down in the comment section. But then, I feel like people wouldn't have enough to do on the internet. So
Right. Well, I think that's about all the time we have.
Mhm.
Where can we find you on social media and all that?
Yeah, I'm at Megg_Jacobs, and that's Meg with two G's. So it's MEGG_JACOBS. And that's on TikTok, Twitter, it's not what it's called anymore, Threads, Instagram, Facebook, all those places. I'm really active on Threads. So if you want to hit me up over there, you can come hang out. I'm like one of the, 1,200 people that's really active on Threads, but it's a party. Come hang out.
Yeah, actually, I ran into your account on Threads,
Yeah.
and that's how we got this podcast.
Yeah, it's
Well,
great.
thank you thank you so much. Check out Meg's music. It's all on Spotify and all the streaming platforms.
Mhm.
When's your next single coming out?
So I just finished tracking for it today earlier, and we're hoping to have instrumentals done at the end of September. So hopefully, probably November. I'm thinking November. I'm gonna do a music video for it too. It's kind of a rebrand, and I'm really excited. It's kind of like a new era of Megg.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Have a good rest of your day. I'm gonna stop it here. Cool.